Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a Protractor side fan fold shirt. I have the shirt turned inside out and I've turned it on its side so it's going to be a little bit easier for me to draw the side fan fold on. To do that, I'm using a really large protractor which I purchased from Harbor Freight, along with a washable marker. I'm making a mark with the washable marker where I'd like for the center of the fan fold to be. Then I'm going to place the 0 on the protractor on that mark. On my protractor, there's a little bit of space between the 0 and the bottom of the actual protractor. So the bottom of my protractor is a little bit below the side of the shirt. Then using a little bit smaller washable marker, I'm going to use the protractor, and every 10 degrees, I'm going to make a small mark on my shirt. I want to continue these marks all the way around this side of the shirt, even onto the sleeve of the shirt. So I'm going to have to turn my protractor in a few minutes to be able to continue those marks on around the shirt. Now that I have my measurement lines on the shirt, I'm going to use a straight edge and draw a line going from the initial dot at the center of the fan fold that I placed on the shirt out through each of those lines to the edge of the shirt. I'm also going to continue these lines onto the sleeve of the shirt. So I should end up having what looks like a big sunray on the side of the shirt. I'm going to go ahead and speed this part of the video up, but if at any point in time you'd like to see it a little bit slower, you can go to the settings icon on YouTube and click that and choose your playback speed. You can either speed it up or slow down the video. So now that I have all of the lines drawn on my shirt, now it's time to start folding them. I'm going to pinch each line, and that is going to be the top of the fold. Then, to make it a little bit easier as I'm going along to hold the folds together, I'm going to use some plastic clothespins. These I've never used with dye, so there's no little dye specks anywhere on these clothespins that could potentially get on my shirt. I normally use wooden clothespins when I make ice barriers. Those soak up the dye really well. So I would never use those on a project like this because it could transfer maybe some of that excess dye, or sometimes the metal bits in those clothespins rust, and I don't want any of that on this shirt. I also use quilting clips, but this is going to be a little bit bigger fold, so I want to use the clothespins for this one. Basically, I'm making a fold where I have each one of the lines. Like I said, that's going to be the top of my fold, and then I'm going to smash it right up next to the fold next to it. And I'm going to continue that all the way around the shirt. For reference, I'm doing this design on a size 2X shirt. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and speed this part of the video up just a little bit as well. If you'll notice, I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to the folds which are really close to the center of the fan fold. And part of the reason for that is those folds are so tiny, I'm going to straighten those when I get ready to tie the shirt. Otherwise, it's really hard to keep those in line while I'm folding the rest of the shirt. Now I'm going to straighten some of those tinier folds right at the very center of the fan fold, and I'm going to tie this entire shirt with some kite string. Once I finished tying this shirt, I placed it aside while I tied a couple more shirts, so by the time I ended up applying the dye, the shirt was pretty much totally dry. It doesn't need to be though. You can go ahead and apply the dye to this design while it's still damp. For this shirt, I've chosen some blues which are a little bit darker and some darker teal colors. I'm going to kind of mix the two together on the shirt. I'm also going to incline this shirt. So I've placed the shirt down inside of a piece of vinyl guttering, and I've placed the center of the fan fold at the end of the vinyl guttering, which is going to be at the top of the incline. So the colors are going to run from the center of the fan fold down to the outside edges of the shirt. Then before I begin applying the dye, I'm going to measure the length of this fold and draw myself some lines on the shirt with a washable marker so that I know where I want to apply the dye. Then I'm also going to take a piece of kite string and tie it around the end of the shirt, and then clip this piece of kite string to the end of the vinyl guttering with a small metal clip so that the shirt doesn't slide out of the guttering while it's inclined. This fold is too long for one of my shorter pieces of vinyl guttering, so I am using one of the 5-foot pieces of vinyl guttering for this particular design. I'm going to apply the dye to each one of the lines that I drew on the shirt. However, at the very center of the fan fold, I'm going to apply dye to that whole area. So that dye color that I'm using is Wedgwood Blue from Dharma Trading Company. I'm going to repeat the colors on the shirt, and I didn't do a very good job when I added my second line of Wedgwood Blue with counting, and so I didn't have enough space to use my last color in the first area. You'll see what I mean when we get further along in the video. The next color that I'm going to use is a more teal color. It's called Kingfisher Blue from Dharma Trading Company. And for this one, I'm just going to put a pretty thick layer of the dye straight on the line. The third color I'm using is Faded Denim from Dharma, and that's one of Dharma's special order colors. That one you can still get in large quantities if you order it from Dharma, but if you want just a 2-ounce or a smaller quantity, you can usually purchase those from a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace. People buy the large quantities and then repackage them down into smaller quantities to sell. I'll leave a link to that Facebook group down below this video in the description. The next color I'm using is Dharma's Teal Blue, followed by Mom Jeans. And Mom Jeans is also one of those special order colors. By the way, Dharma, if you happen to be watching this video, we really need a color that is like either Faded Denim or Mom Jeans, kind of one of those more grayed out blue colors. I know Wedgwood's that way, but it's a lighter color than the other two that you keep in stock all the time. Not a special order color, just one that you keep in stock all the time. That would be spectacular. The next color I'm using is Teal Blue from Dye Spin. And Dye Spin has a teal blue and they have a teal green. And that's exactly how they go. The teal blue is more blue and the teal green leans more green. The next color I'm using is Indigo Blue from Dharma. And then the last color that I didn't get to use in the first portion of the shirt is Tealy Dan, which was a muck dye color from Dharma that they offered in 2024. That one's no longer available, so, I guess it's great that it's at the very end of the shirt so it doesn't make a huge impact, and if you have to leave it out, it's not that big of a deal. Then over the top of the die, I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash. And then because the shirt is a little bit taller, I'm going to use some pieces of plastic cutting board that I've cut up, place those down beside the shirt in the thicker portions of the shirt, and that'll make myself a little bit of an extra ice barrier so that I can add a little more ice in those areas on the shirt. I'm also going to add a couple of small dye bottles beside the piece of plastic cutting board so that it holds it in place. I need this setup to be fairly secure because remember, I am going to incline it, and if I don't have these dye bottles beside the plastic, the minute I incline the shirt, this whole thing could just slide out the bottom. Now I'm going to add on a layer of ice. And when I add the ice on the shirt, I want to make sure I add plenty of ice to the very top of the incline. When I incline the shirt, it's going to shift that ice down just a little bit. And if I don't have plenty up at the very top part or what's going to be the center of the fan fold, it can make that area of the shirt quite a bit lighter than the rest of the shirt, which I don't want. So I want to make sure I have plenty of ice up at the very top of my incline. After I have plenty of ice on the shirt, I'm going to go ahead and put a baseball-sized wiffle ball down at the very end of this piece of vinyl guttering, just to make sure if for some reason the kite string comes unattached from the shirt, it doesn't go ahead and slide all the way out into the muck. Muck is what's going to form as this ice melts and mixes with the dye. Then to incline the shirt, I'm using a long tote, one that's intended to go underneath the bed, but it doesn't have super tall sides. I'm going to place one end of the piece of vinyl guttering down inside of this tote and leave the other end hanging off the edge. That's going to place the shirt at an incline. Because this piece of guttering is 5 feet long, it's a little bit more unstable than one of the shorter pieces of guttering. So placing it in a larger tote is going to make it less likely to tip over or have any kind of issues. I placed the shirt aside and I allowed the ice to melt. And then after this first layer of ice melted, I still had some undissolved dye on top, so I added a second layer of ice. Then after the second layer of ice melted, I left the shirt alone and allowed it to process for about 48 hours before I rinsed it. As you can see, the dye went through really well to the back side. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I warmed the water to hot and I continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Then I went ahead and untied the shirt, and instead of just continuing to rinse for a long time, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, placed the shirt inside along with a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap, and just allowed the shirt to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one turned out really pretty. I like the combination of the blues and the teals together, and I love all the perfect lines. I always think that's really cool to look at, very pleasing to your eye to see all the dye flowing down those lines, and they're all perfectly spaced out. I really like the Protractor designs. I think they look cool. I also think that the way the dye flows and the lines go, it almost looks three-dimensional in areas. It looks like those lines are actually humped up, which I think that's a cool effect too. So I think this one is really pretty. You know, the Protractor folds take a little bit longer because you actually have to measure and draw your lines and pay a little bit more attention when you fold them, but I think they turn out so pretty. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.